Hey guys, just wanted to give a very quick introduction to this video. It introduces itself, but I recorded it originally on Facebook Live and just thought it was worth uploading to YouTube as well. So thank you for watching it here. Thank you for supporting our YouTube channel. If you like this video, we'll be sharing more across on Facebook, but most likely on YouTube as well. And to be honest, I prefer watching video content on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button below, like this video. Feel free to post any questions you've got about any of the subjects covered in the comments, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Hey guys, my name is Mike Stenhouse, and first of all, I just want to thank you for joining us on this Facebook Live. I am getting a message on my screen, and this is why I hate Facebook Lives, because every time I do something, I've got no idea what is going on. But anyway, alongside my wife Victoria, we run Inside Property Investing, and as well as launching a relatively frequent podcast where we interview other successful investors, we also have a whole range of resources to help property investors and developers grow and scale your business. One thing we have never really touched on until now, though, is the idea of topical news. Most of our content is relevant for quite a wide period of time, interviewing investors about their whole story, or sharing tips and guidance that will be applicable now or 12 months down the line. But obviously there is a lot happening in the property world that has an impact on us in a much shorter space of time. It could be day-to-day events or week-to-week events. And this is the type of thing that I used to cover when I had a regular slot at our local property networking meetings in my previous life as a letting agent. And I'd share some updates that were pertinent to property investors that had been happening over the past couple of weeks. And I've not done that for maybe 2 years or more. But this month in particular, there have been a few things coming up that I thought, well, actually, it's going to be extremely useful for other property investors to know about this. Now, the beauty of doing it as a Facebook Live is I get to sit in the comfort of my own home, as do you. And I get to have some notes in front of me as well, so I don't need to memorize everything. So I will be referring to what I've got written down in front of me throughout this. But there were, I think, 4 things that I wanted to touch on today just to bring to your attention and hopefully give you some perspective of what is going on in the property world that might impact you. So we're going to cover a new bill that has been voted through by members of Parliament that could have an impact on all of us as landlords. Also going to be talking about stealth Article 4 directives, and this is a big one, particularly for HMO landlords who rely on permitted development to change the use of their buildings from C3 to C4. There's been something pretty sneaky going on in our area, and I'm a bit worried that this is going to happen across the board going forwards. So I'm going to talk about that and touch on how it could impact us. And then a couple of price changes to things that will impact both developers and investors. So, 2018, it looks like it is going to be another tough year for us. We're not getting any respite from any of the avenues that like to take out all of their frustrations on us as investors and landlords. But hopefully it's not all bad news. There is some good stuff in here as well, some takeaways that we can take and apply to our own businesses, hopefully, that will give us an advantage over some of the competitors that aren't maybe necessarily as up to date with the news. So, like I say, thank you for joining us. If there is anyone watching this that thinks, this is actually going to be useful for other people, I would hugely appreciate it if you shared this video. Help us get the message out there, help us continue to help other property investors like yourself. But we'll also be keeping an eye on the comments throughout this, if I can multitask. I'm not making any promises, but I've got my little comments box open next to me. So if any of you do want to discuss this, ask any questions, please feel free to post a comment, and I'll either try to deal with it directly during this video, or I'll answer it later on and we can have a bit of a chat in the comments section once I'm finished recording. But the first thing I want to share is the changes that are happening in the way that tenants can, what's the best way to put this? The way that tenants have control over the standard of their property. So this is the bill that I was talking about. It's just been through, I think, the second round in the House of Commons. It was approved unanimously, so all of the members of Parliament seem to be behind this, and ultimately I think it is a good thing. The bill is called, let me just read this here, the Homes, Fitness for Human Habitation and Liability for Housing Standards Bill. It sounds kind of funky, doesn't really say what it means, but I think this is something that most of us would have assumed was already part of law. So you would have to, what am I trying to say? This is why I probably should have prepared a bit more for this. The bill is basically introducing certain standards that landlords need to abide by when they're providing rental accommodation to tenants from a residential point of view. Obviously, we're not talking about commercial stuff here. This is just residential. And like I say, it's the type of thing that you would assume was already part of law. But from memory and from reading in front of me what I've got here, apparently our only current obligations are to the structure of a property when it is broken or damaged. And I think part of the problem is this is pretty vague. No one really understands the exact definition of where a landlord's responsibilities begin and end. So this bill is hoping to change that. And like I say, I think overall this is a good thing. Apparently something like 1 in 6 rental properties in the UK are deemed to be unfit for human habitation, and that's not the type of industry that I want to be operating in, and I doubt it's the type of industry that you want to be operating in either. I think it's difficult sometimes when we are seeing all these great pictures of projects that people are finishing in the Facebook groups, in the magazines, at property networking meetings, that we kind of forget that there's a lot of real bad property out there as well. A lot of landlords that just don't care about their tenants. So something that brings in changes that mean landlords have a defined responsibility for the level of accommodation that they need to provide, I think is a good thing. What I am concerned about, though, is the part of the bill that says if the landlords do not comply, tenants then have powers to A, force them to comply, but to seek compensation if the landlords don't reply. And that is the piece that concerns me. So I think it says in future, this is a quote from the debate that happened in Parliament during the week. It says, in future, tenants will be able to act against landlords to force them to take remedial action and obtain compensation when they do not. So if a landlord is renting out a property and the standards aren't up to the requirements within this bill, the tenants can sue the landlord and seek compensation for living in a property that's unfit by the standards of this bill. Now, like I say, in practice this sounds fair, and I think it is a good positive step forward. That's the reason why it got a unanimous vote through Parliament. The risk that I fear is going to come about with this is going to be another rise of no-win, no-fee solicitors and this claim culture expanding where decent landlords are being targeted because there's some loophole that tenants are worried about. Show me the photos of the properties 5 years after the refurbishment. I know what you mean, Gareth. It's one of these things that you get to see all these shiny photos, and you never really get the updates 6 months, 12 months down the line, whether it's the photographs once the tenants have wrecked the place, or if the landlord's not maintained it. And I think you make a great point there that these things we like to see the kind of before tenants move in. We don't often get to see, or people don't like to showcase what's happened afterwards. But my point about this is that it could open up this claim culture, so we do need to watch ourselves. When this bill is voted, when it comes into law later in this year, most likely, we need to be very aware of what is going on. We need to be very aware of exactly what those standards are, and as decent landlords, we need to be complying with them to the letter to make sure that we do not open ourselves up to this claim culture. So like I say, overall, I think it's a positive thing. It's a step in the right direction to make sure that everyone has a safe and a warm and a nice house to live in, but we need to be careful. So as this updates, we will provide more insight into exactly what the bill contains and what you need to be doing to making sure that you're complying with it and that you're not going to open yourself up to litigation down the line. Second thing that I wanted to touch on was this stealth Article 4 directive that has come in Trafford, which is a borough within Greater Manchester. And at the moment, if you're investing anywhere in the northwest in HMOs, you will know that most of Manchester, this area here, if you can see my screen, is covered by, so this is Manchester City Council, it's covered by an Article 4 directive. The borough adjoining that, Trafford, there was an update recently that planning permission is going to be applied for to create a new university campus here. Now, I'm not a big football fan, but I believe it's something to do with Manchester United class in '92. I think it's like Ryan Giggs and Paul Scholes, and that's about as far as I know who the class of '92 is. But they are looking to create a sports university campus, not just for athletes, but also for sports management in this part of Stratford. And they've not submitted a planning application yet. They don't think the university is going to open until 2019 at the earliest, so it's at least 18 months away. And even then, the ramp up in terms of number of students is going to be over like a 10-year period. So I think it's going to max out at about 26,000 students 10 years from now, effectively, and it's going to ramp up to that gradually over the course of those next sort of 8 or so years. Trafford Council, in their infinite wisdom, have implemented a blanket Article 4 direction to remove the permitted development from C3, which is a residential dwelling, to C4, a small HMO up to 6 occupants, across the whole borough. So not just in this area in Stretford where the campus is going to be, but across the whole borough, down to some of the really expensive parts of the sort of Cheshire Triangle, where there is no real concern of HMOs taking over. And they've done this because they don't want a proliferation of student HMOs. And again, you can kind of see the logic here. But according to my notes, if I can find what page we're up to now, this was announced on the 15th of December. So 15th of December, 10 days before Christmas, Trafford Borough Council announced that they were going to implement an Article 4 directive across the entire borough. On the 21st of December, so just 6 days later, this directive came into force. So any C3 to C4 conversions, so current residential dwelling into small HMO, will now need to have a full planning application. There was very little consultation on this. There was very little time for people to react. So anyone who is mid-flight with a project, anyone who had bought something in November and was converting it into an HMO throughout December into January, or maybe just going through conveyancing now, getting a residential dwelling with the hope to turn it into a small HMO, now we're going to have a planning application to contend with. And with an Article 4 directive in place, our experience is these are more often than not rejected by the council. So it's going to be extremely difficult for anyone to set up any new HMOs in Trafford. And the main concern with this, obviously, is the timing. They have given very little consultation. The fact that it covers the whole borough, which seems excessive, also means that people who thought the university wasn't going to have any impact on them are now getting dragged into this fight as well. So people down here in Hale and Bowden that wanted to create HMOs, they're going to be impacted by a university campus opening miles away when there's going to be no demand for student accommodation down here. Now, in another neighbouring borough, Salford you probably have heard of. It's where BBC moved to Media City. There has been a real proliferation of HMOs in the past sort of 3 years or so maybe, and they are taking a more measured approach. So they've been contemplating introducing an Article 4 directive for quite a while, and they're not planning to implement it until later in 2018. So they're giving the public plenty of time, and they're having plenty of consultation debates and announcements and all that sort of stuff to make sure that everyone is well aware of the changes that are happening. And they're also doing it on a restricted geographic basis. So pretty much this area of Salford and Eccles, I believe, is where the Article 4 is going to be, rather than the whole borough. So places like Worsley and Earlham, Swinton aren't going to be affected by it because there's no issue with an oversupply of HMOs in these areas. They're not going to implement the Article 4 directive there. It's a common sense approach. It is done in line with, the timings that should, in theory, be applied. But the issue is there are no real guidelines. Any council can implement these Article 4 directives overnight if they want to. There is very few checks and balances in place by government, unlike a new piece of planning policy that's implemented that needs to go through various checks. An Article 4 directive can be implemented on a council-by-council basis with very little input from anyone else. Now, there's a few things to say here, I guess. If you are in the process of converting an HMO in Trafford and you worry that this is going to impact you, get your application submitted ASAP. But also be aware that for the first 12 months of a new Article 4 directive being implemented, there is a compensation scheme in place. So if you are out of pocket as a result of this, you can put your claim forward to Trafford and hopefully be reimbursed in some way if you can no longer convert your C3 into C4. I don't know what the practicalities of that actually look like. I don't know what the success rate is of claims for compensation. But it's worth keeping in mind that there is, in theory, a process there. Now, our planning consultant, a guy called, let me see if I got his slide here, Ralph Taylor. So Ralph is planning consultant for Paul Butler Associates, and He's helped us with a lot of applications. He's replaced architects as far as we're concerned. Really, having a good planning consultant on your team is phenomenal. He's written an article for us. It's on our blog on insidepropertyinvesting.com, and he goes into all the details of how Article 4 directives can be implemented, when they can be implemented. He talks a little bit about the sort of 12-month moratorium or compensation period as well. So well worth having a look at that article if you are interested. But for me, the main concern is, if this is being done in Trafford, where else is this likely to happen? Our council is going to see that, oh, well, Trafford implemented an Article 4 directive with like 7 days or 6 days notice. Maybe we should do that as well. We're fed up with HMOs. And it poses a real threat to HMO investors who are wondering, is this area good for me to move into? Normally, one of the checks would be, is there an Article 4 directive in place, or is there a consultation period in which I need to get my project completed because one is coming in down the line? Now it seems like any council can implement an Article 4 directive whenever they want with as little notice as they like. And, for me, I'm thinking, well, do I want to go out and buy any more HMOs if Article 4 directives could come in overnight and effectively wipe out our chance of being able to convert that C3 into C4? So it's something that we all really need to think about. But like I say, if you want more information on this, head over to the website, speak to Ralph, give me a shout. It's something that I think we're going to hear more about over the coming months again. It's been implemented, I think, for 6 months in Trafford. They're going to review it. I'm sure there will be a bit of an outcry about, from existing investors as well. So if you are in Trafford and you want to know how you can, proactively defend yourself against this, then again, get in touch and maybe we can get some people together. But yeah, just relevant for all HMO investors across the board, I feel. Next thing I want to talk about is the price changes to planning applications. Now, this is a quick one. Came in on January 17th, so already in effect. And you can see here the changes that have been implemented. So basically, everything has been increased by 20% across the board, all planning application fees, more or less. So the householder planning application has gone from £172 up to £206. This is basically for an existing dwelling if you want to do an extension, loft conversion that is out with permitted development, anything that would happen to an individual dwelling, an existing individual dwelling. The application fee's gone up from £172 to £206, a 20% increase. Prior approval applications, so this is things like change of use where it's already being covered under permitted development and you want to get that prior approval from the council. Application's gone up from £80 to £96. And then the new dwelling house application, which is for the creation of a new dwelling. So if there's nothing there at the moment, it's gone up from £385 to £462. So like I say, 20% increase across the board there. But if you are a developer building any volume of houses, you add a 20%, effectively an extra £100 per dwelling, 10, 20 dwellings, your costs have just gone up by a couple of £1,000s. So worth keeping this in mind. If you are a developer doing any scale of developments, you're probably already well aware of this, but just worth updating your deal analyzer spreadsheets with the new updated figure. And if you're looking to get into development, keep in mind that some of the figures you might have had for application fees will now be out of date as of the 17th of January. So keep that in mind as well. Down at the bottom here, this planning portal website has got all of the updated prices on it. So it goes into things, for commercial applications and all sorts of different things that I didn't think was necessarily relevant to share here. But if you are interested in how the other prices for applications have increased and you can't multiply it by 1.2, then go and check out the planning portal website, and that's got all the details there. And then finally, the last thing is another price increase, and this is again more relevant to SpareRoom, it is SpareRoom. It's more relevant to HMO investors who are using SpareRoom to rent out their rooms. They've increased their prices since the start of the year as well, and in some cases quite considerably. So you can see that their old pricing, which you used to be able to get, I think it was a 12-month membership for like £129. The most they will do now is a 6-month membership for £99. So it's something like 50-60% price rise for their kind of basic advertising package. I think you can still get free adverts on there, but with these price rises and the change in functionality, it kind of feels like it's going the way that those free adverts will be phased out, or certainly the prominence that they will have on the website will be reduced significantly, with a big emphasis being pushed onto paid for adverts. Much like Rightmove, it is a platform that has got checks and balances in place to make sure the property going on there is only being listed by kind of approved agents. So I kind of feel like SpareRoom is going down that way as well. You can see the new prices here though. So like I say, 6 months for, these are all for a single property as well, by the way. 6 months, £99. You can do it on a weekly basis, a fortnightly basis, or a monthly basis as well. And then if you are a regular user or you're an HMO letting agent, again, the prices have changed. So you can get 2 adverts. These are all monthly prices here compared to the different time frames there. These are all monthly prices, but the price changes depending on how many listings you want at any one time. So two adverts live at any one time is £39. Pro 5, £49 for 5 rooms, 10, £69. So actually the economies of scale are pretty good as you ramp up your portfolio. But the only real difference I saw between these sort of basic paid for packages and the pro ones was that you get free bold listing. So with the basic package, you get a bold listing within the listing. So if yours is the 10th in the list, it'll be bold at that 10th position. On the pro, you get a bold listing that's pinned to the top of the page. So you're going to get more visibility, more prominence on the page. But it's like, effectively, I think on the 2 listings one I worked out, it's almost double the price just to get your advert at the top of the page. Whether or not that is effective, I'm not really sure. We'll run some tests on our own portfolio over the next couple of months to see if that sort of pin to the top prominent advert gives good return on investment. But when you look at SpareRoom as a platform, it's where the far majority of our HMO tenants come from. Has been for a long time. Even when we had the letting agency and we had stuff on Rightmove, it was probably about 70% SpareRoom, 20% Rightmove, 10% recommendations, and a few other portals that we used to use. Now it's probably 90% SpareRoom, 10% recommendations, and other places. So when you think about that, it's still not a vast sum of money. And on the plus side, it will hopefully mean that the number of listings may start to dwindle as well, because over the last 18 months or so, the number of people listing their properties on SpareRoom has grown dramatically, and putting some sort of price barrier in there may mean that it's only the serious landlords here. The other people will go back to, Gumtree and Facebook ads and places like that. So it may increase the quality in SpareRoom. I think basically they're trying to ensure that they are providing good quality products, not just to their landlords, their advertisers, but also to the tenants. So it might actually be a good thing if it reduces some of the garbage that is on there as well. But just worth keeping in mind again that, as an HMO landlord or an HMO letting agent, this is just another example of where costs are increasing. So that was basically all I wanted to share. Hopefully it was useful. Like I say, there's a few updates in there that are, a mix of good and bad news. I think the bill to increase housing standards and the way that tenants can seek to have issues rectified is a positive step for the industry. We just need to make sure that it doesn't become a big claim culture. Price rises, they are what they are. It's not great news, but on SpareRoom, maybe you can look on the bright side and say that it will improve the quality. It might reduce the number of competitors that we have on there as well. And certainly for the Article 4 directive, there's not much good news there, unfortunately. It is a bit worrying that councils can do this just, as and when they see fit without much notification to other investors, to members of the public. It could really alter the way that people assess areas. Maybe it's coming to the stage where there's going to be the C3 to C4 permitted development rights are just going to be revoked across the board, but only time will tell. So as that one pans out over the coming weeks and months, we will report back and let you know exactly what's going on there. But yeah, like I say, hopefully that was useful. If there's anything in here that you think other people would be interested in, I'd hugely appreciate it if you can share it. I'll post a link to the article on the Article 4 directive below here in the comments, as well as the link to the planning portal and the SpareRoom pricing. Anything else that you think is going to be useful, just give me a shout and I'll send you the links across to that. And yeah, feel free to stick some comments below this and I will do my best to answer. It'd be good to hear what your thoughts are on all of these things. And hopefully we'll be back maybe in a week or two with some more updates on the property industry to let you know exactly what has been going on and how these things are affecting us. But for now, that's everything. Thanks for joining us and I'll see you again very soon.